Hello, I am Precious Swain Peaks, owner of Anointed for Prosperity Bookkeeping and more. And today we're going to take a walkthrough of the ERC. I see a lot of posts, a lot of advertisements, and a lot of questions regarding the ERC. The easiest way for us to find facts is to go to the IRS or the Treasury.gov. Those are the entities offering and regulating this credit. So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to walk through a few resources just so you know where to look in the future regarding the ERC. For this particular resource, I am at irs.gov/newsroom /IRS provides guidance for employers claiming the employee retention credit for the first 2 quarters of 2021. Now, there have been lots of changes as this has been introduced back and forth on what timeframes could be claimed up until and how far um, out you can still go back and claim these things. The first thing we want to understand is that most businesses that qualified, of course, their payroll companies requested this when filing their payroll taxes each quarter. For those that didn't or were unaware, or those who did their own payroll and didn't know what to do, then we have many that had to go back and apply for the refunded amount later. So we see that um, this guidance was for the ERC, which was declared in the CARES Act. It was modified by the Taxpayer Certainty and Disaster Tax Relief Act also. So, for the bare basics of it, you know that you can look at the CARES Act or at the Relief Act. Okay. If you go to Notice 21-23, it explains the changes to the employee retention credit for the first 2 calendar quarters of 2021. So remember, originally it was covering 2020, then they extended it into 2021. And before all was said and done, it was moved to the end of 2021. But we will cover that as we go through. And we see that if you go to this notice, it will explain the increase in the maximum credit amount, the expansion of the categories of employers that may claim it, modification to the gross receipts test, revisions of the definitions of qualified wages, and a new restriction on the ability of eligible employers to request an advance of the credit. As a result of the changes made by the Relief Act, eligible employers can now claim a refundable tax credit against the employer share of the Social Security tax equal to 70% of the qualified wages that they paid after after December 31st of 2020 through June 30th of 2021. The qualified wages were limited to 10,000 per employee per calendar quarter. Thus, the maximum employee retention credit was $7,000 per employee per calendar year for a total of $14,000 for the first 2 calendar quarters of 2021. So you have to be careful when you're looking at these different advertisements and these different situations that you are actually discussing in your situation for yourself or for your client the appropriate information. And because it changed so much, I highly recommend that you actually click and go to these different PDFs and actually read them for yourself. Now, of course, we already know that that a lot of this was designed more towards the smaller employees with 500 employees or less in 2019. And they were able to request advance payment of the credit on Form 7200. So let's take a quick look at Form 7200. Okay, I'm going to have to go ahead and Google and pull up a sample of one because as you see, the Form 7200 is no longer available because it was supposed to be filed by the 31st of January. But it is on the IRS.gov in their forms archive. So we're going to take a quick look at the form itself. And this is the form that was supposed to be used if you wanted to claim the advance credits. Okay. Now I want to point out something very specific on this form. It's asking you, what did you file or what will you file for 2021? Because this can be applied for after the fact. I want to say for the 2020 year, they have until 2024, and for the 2021 year, they have up until 2025. They're going to want to know for the 2020 year, what did you file? Was it a 941, a 941 PR, a 941 SS? Was it a 943? Was it a 944? Or was it a CT1? Be very careful what you answer here because what you answer here will be verified. They will ask you to sign a release of transcripts and they will check to make sure that this was filed. So even if one is created to place with the application, if it was not actually filed, once it goes through review and they find that it wasn't filed, you will be looking at fines and potential fraud charges. It wants to know the number of employees. Let's talk real quick about what employees are because the rest of from there, the form is basic. But I wanted you to see the form so you know what the form consists of. Okay. Employees are people that you pay payroll. Employees are not, again, employees are not independent contractors. Okay. So over here, I'm on a whole different screen. On this screen, I am on IRS.gov newsroom COVID-19 related employee retention credits. How to claim the employee retention credits, FAQs. Okay. And it walks you through a little more on how they filed the first quarter of 2020 and that the wages should have been, of course, on the 941, how to use the 7200, how to fax it to the IRS, and after July 2nd, that the minimum would be $25. It is important. I'm not going to read through all of this for you. I just want to make sure that you understand where to look when trying to find this information. This information is important and should not be rushed through because the 2020 quarters were handled slightly different than the 2021 quarters. So as you see, these are the instructions for the 2020 quarters and the answers to the most frequently asked questions. You see, now we hop over to where they made the change. They made the change to extend into 2021. They made the change based on the Relief Act. And as you see, it breaks down. New law extends COVID tax credit for employers who keep workers on payroll. And it breaks down what the change entailed. Okay. It breaks down what changed effective January of 2021. And um, if there was a suspension, if there was a decline, and different things of that nature, it is important that you make yourself aware, because if you're trying to do a backdated application for your client and cover both 2020 and 2021, there are some variants. There are some variants. So I'm going to hop over here to the COVID related employee retention credit questions, which as you see it referenced on the other page. And it walks through determining when an employer is considered to have significant decline. How is the significant decline in gross receipts calculated? And you're going to want to know how to calculate this, because most of us are doing manual applications, and this information is important in order to prove why they are eligible for the credit. What are gross receipts for an employer that is non-tax exempt? Does the employer need to prove the decline? Okay. If an employer does not determine that the significant decline receipts in 2020 until after 2021, may it still be eligible? Yes. So it's important to go in and check the different things. And it gives you the links you need to double check your information, because with this one, as it shows how to correct employment taxes. So if the taxes were incorrectly filed for 2020 based on the change in 2021, you would do a 941X and fix it so that your customer can qualify if it is appropriate. Okay. If they just started at 19, how do they determine a decline in gross receipts? How does an employer that acquires a business during 2020 determine decline in gross receipts? It gives you a breakdown. It even tells you what are gross receipts for a tax exempt employer. And so if you allow yourself to go in and just take a look, a lot of the things that seem to be the major questions are all right there available for your perusal. Okay. We go in and we see, if you go to the employee retention credit, they tell you in advance where to go, that this page is not current because of the changes. Because of the changes, the information here was updated. Okay. It shows where to click for information regarding certain things. And as you see here, that November the 15th of 2021, they amended it to for it to cover wages paid before October 21st, 2021. So you're going to want to make sure that you're paying attention and know what time frames are covered in making this application. Okay. Um, they have where they made a termination of the retroactive employee credit. So, of course, if you want to know till when and how, of course, you're going to click. It's going to take you over to December 6th of 2021. And as of December 6th of 2021, it said the IRS issued guidance for employers regarding the retroactive termination of the ERC. The Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act was enacted on the 15th of November and amended the law so that employee credit applies only to wages paid before October 21st. So at that time, before that law passed, you were able to claim up until December. They passed the law based on the things that they saw going on throughout the economic community and bounced it back to October 1st unless the employer is a recovery startup business. For more information, of course, you can go to this notice. If the employer received advances, it tells you what to do so that they avoid penalty. If the employer reduced their tax deposits, it tells you what to do so that they avoid penalty. So you may be saying, well, if it stopped up to that date, why are applications still going? Because they had a time period to go back and retroactively apply for these credits if they did not take them in the first place. So you're going to want to make sure, since this is now almost a year old in the wages that can be claimed, that you are using adequate records. I will be honest and tell you, despite the fact that I work in accounting, I prepare taxes, I did not do any of these applications for anyone whose payroll I did not do. The reason behind that is simply because if you provide incorrect documentation as the preparer of the application, you are held accountable. So, anyone whose payroll I did not do their application. Well, you may be saying, well, why, P? Because just because you handed me a 941 doesn't mean you filed it. I do not have the bandwidth to be a detective and track down your paperwork. There have been many, many, many applications that went in with fake 940 and 941s. I do not want to be a part of all that. So if I didn't do your payroll and know that this is what was really filed, I just chose not to. If you are in this field and you are doing these applications, make sure to do your due diligence so that anything that you put in the application is factual to the best of your knowledge. For those who did their own payroll and used QuickBooks, Gusto, a few other entities, these entities file your payroll taxes for you. So, unless you put in the program for it not to, it's going to pull them and it's going to send them for you. So, the documents that come from those entities normally are 100% accurate unless the person manually did the payroll and manually is saying that they paid it. Normally, it's paid because that's one of the features that they offer. But we want to make sure, if we go to the trouble, the time, and we put the client to the expense, that we have followed all of the accurate steps and that we have explained to them that this is for W-2 employees, and just things of that nature. Now, you may be saying, well, the client had an S Corp, and an S Corp requires them to have the owner of the S Corp on payroll. Does a self employed person on payroll qualify for this? Um, I'm going to say, with the changes going back and forth, originally, no, they were not. But what I will say is do the research. This presentation wasn't to tell you how to do it, it would show you where to find the information so that you could do it correctly. One of the other sources of information is treasury.gov. So between irs.gov, treasury.gov, and the Relief Act, the CARES Act, and the Infrastructure Act, you can find all of the information that you need about the Employee Retention Credit. I hope this helps to give you a little insight and a little direction. Again, I am Precious Wayne Peaks, owner of Anointed for Prosperity, Bookkeeping and More. If you have more questions, I can be reached on Facebook, on Instagram at precious_Swain, or via email info@anointedforprosperity.com, or you could go to www.anointedforprosperity.com and book a free consultation. Any one-on-one questions will be confidential, of course, but we will walk through the steps to find the verifiable information. I practice to not give my opinion because my opinion doesn't make any difference and cannot be used in a court of law. Thanks for tuning in and have an amazing day.